Puppet animation. Sometimes it's called claymation, if your model's made out of plasticine. We have a model of a character this big. It stands on a set top without falling over. Frame of animation. They step back in, they move the puppet a tiny amount, yeah? And then they move it again, take another photo, they step, they move, they step, they photo, they step, they move, they step, they photo, they step, they move, they step, it's repetitive. It's time. This goes on and on over the course of the day until it feels like the animator's soul has departed his or her body. At the end of the day, they're lucky if they've got 10 seconds of work done. That would be a bonza day work, okay? Puppet animation. It is not a puppet on a string. High on a hill sits a lonely goat herd. It's not that. Nor is it a glove puppet where you shove your fist up a frog's butt and work his mouth. It's not that. Who can give me an example of a famous stop-motion puppet animated character, film, or indeed TV show? I'm coming over here this time. Big voice. Coraline, very good. Coraline's a great example, okay? There's also preschool shows made this way, and there has been for many years. We think of things like Bob the Builder, Fireman Sam, and Postman Pat. But there are films made this way. Films that are supposed to be for little kids, but big kids like me get excited because they look beautiful. They are divinely animated, and they're really well written. They're often dark, they're often funny. Films like Coraline, Nightmare Before Christmas, okay? Let's think of things like Kubo and the Two Strings, which is absolutely amazing, okay? They're all done with puppets. Now, I'm lucky. I get to work with all those different areas of animation. But it's puppets I work with more than any other. And there is one particular character I'm best known for. He is undoubtedly Bob the Builder. As Paul said, I am the designer of Bob the Builder. I am talking about the original Bob the Builder, by the way, not the horror show that is currently on your TV sets. I'm very proud to say I have nothing to do with that. The original Bob, though, I'm all over it. I'm the designer. Everything you see on the show from day one, I'm the guy who designed it from scratch. It was a blank piece of paper. I had to design the characters, the world, everything that Bob interacts with. It could be a bucket, a spade, a hand grenade. If Bob needs it, I draw it, we build it, we animate it. And that's my first version of Bob. It's not a million miles away from the character that you guys grew up with, but I had to make some changes along the way. First of all, the feet are too small. He couldn't stand up. We had to give him work boots. The hands are too small. He couldn't pick up his tools. We gave him big fat mitts. The moustache, I thought I was being clever giving him a mow. The reason being is this. Okay, when you think of Wallace and Gromit, when Wallace speaks, more cheese, Gromit, his mouth goes all over the place. 24 times a second we stop the camera, we step in there, we tear his mouth off. It's called lip synchronization. We change the movement of the mouth according to the voice track the actor recorded. I know about this because my job, very briefly, on Wallace and Gromit was making hundreds and hundreds of Wallace's mouths. Very glamorous. However, if your character has a moustache, certainly one that covers his mouth, we don't need to do that. When he speaks, all you do is waggle the moustache. It was a cheat, it was a shortcut. I was being clever. Too clever for my own good, though, because the boss of the BBC pointed out preschool boys and girls are scared of facial hair. The BBC have done research into this. I don't know what that research involves, okay? I like to imagine the chief exec of the BBC, a lovely old lady, hiding in some bushes outside a preschool wearing a fake beard. When the kids walk past at home time, she leaps out and shouts, "Boo!" Which would scare me as well, so Bob had a shave, the moustache went. Last of all, I said we're going to get big laughs. Let's give him a nice big fat pair of sideburns. He takes his helmet off. He's completely bald. And they said, please, dear God, give him hair. I said, trust me, it's really funny. They said, do you want to work on this show? I said, I'll give him a wig. That's how Bob came into being. I started work on Bob 1997. I finished work on Bob 2007. Bearing in mind, I colour in for a living. My powers of maths are rudimentary at best. But to me, Bob is roughly 22 years old. He's certainly older than you, but he's a lot smaller. He's that big. That's how big the puppet is for Bob. Many people assume that Bob was made in Hollywood because it was such a global phenomenon and made billions of dollars. No, far more glamorous than Hollywood. Manchester, England. It's a British show that sells all over the world. And if you want to do what I do for a living, you can. If you want to be an author, an artist, or an animator, if you want to be a storyteller, a writer, or a performer, you most certainly can. The trick is this. It's quite simple. Keep your hobby. Keep the hobby, the thing that you love doing, the passion that you have, for something that you do in school and at home. Keep it going, nurture it, and take it as far as you possibly can. Everything I do in my career is one out of the hobbies I had when I was your age, yeah? Maybe you enjoy reading for pleasure. That's a huge deal, okay? The more you read, the better you'll be at writing. The two things go hand in hand. It's a no-brainer. Most importantly, though, reading a good book is pure escapism, and we all need that in our lives from time to time. Maybe you enjoy getting on a stage, song, dance, musical instruments, jazz hands. Keep your hobby. Maybe you enjoy sport, but throw that in the mix as well, okay? Tennis, cricket, football, rugby, hockey, netball. Keep your hobby. Maybe you enjoy painting, sculpture, model making, illustration. Some of you boys may be into fashion. I'm not here to judge. Keep your hobby. At the very least, you'll have a worthwhile pastime for the rest of your lives. At the most, you can make a living doing the thing that you love. Not everybody gets to do that in life. I know I'm very fortunate indeed. Bob's one of my characters, there are others. A few years ago, a TV show I made called Frankenstein's Cat was based upon a picture book that I'd first written and illustrated, okay? The other character I'm known for is on TV at the moment. Do any of you guys get to watch some of those preschool shows from the BBC in the UK? Put your hands up if you've seen some of those shows that have been on the BBC. You may know this character then in that case. His name is Ra-Ra the Noisy Lion. I am his dad. I am the creator of Ra-Ra. I'm the designer of Ra-Ra. And I write a few of the episodes of Ra-Ra as well. Yeah, there he is, see? He's not very big at all, is he? All hairy and smiley. Yeah, there's Ra-Ra as well. What we're going to do in this session now is I'm going to show you how I draw some of the characters. But for this session, that's not the real reason why I'm here. I'm here to talk to you guys about the books I write for older children, okay? Fantasy and horror. That's the stuff that I'm into when it comes to my writing. Now, designing characters for animation and picture books, it's not rocket science. It's all about playing with shapes, okay? For me, it's the simpler shapes, the better. And it's variations of them. For example, in the case of Bob the Builder, all the characters in Bob, all the human characters anyway, they're all identical. Not at first glance, but look below the surface. They all have round heads and egg-shaped bodies. To create different characters, all I need to do is give them different clothes to wear. Hats, wigs, shirts, and shoes. So, in the case of Bob, he's got that round, I'm going to change the pen because it's not got any ink in it, it doesn't appear. Okay, let's try that one, okay? He's got a round head and an egg-shaped body. Does that look like Bob the Builder? No? Okay, we're going to put a line across there. That line would be his hat. Very good, okay? There's the rim of the hard hat, and there's a peak of the helmet. All we do then is fill in the blanks, okay? Eyes, nose, mouth, ears, sideburns. There's his arms. He has that check plaid shirt, okay? There's his hands, so he doesn't drop his tools. There's his belt, so he doesn't drop his trousers. We don't want that on the BBC. That's how we draw Bob the Builder, okay? I'm going to change that pen just in case we've got a little bit more ink, okay? In the case of Wendy, Wendy is exactly the same. She's just dressed slightly differently. She's got a big round head. She's got an egg-shaped body, just like Bob. Eyes like Bob, nose like Bob, mouth like Bob, ears like Bob. We'll put her hands on her hips. She's had a row with Bob. He's left his muddy boots on the carpet again. So far, it could be Bob. To make it Wendy, there's only two things we need to do. First of all, it's the earring. An earring, which Bob doesn't wear. Apart from weekends, that's another story we don't need to go into right now. There's 4 pieces to the fringe. 1, 2, 3, 4, ponytail and red ribbon. That's Wendy. Pilchard the cat, super easy. Pilchard is just 2 ovals, that's all we're looking at, and an S-shaped tail. 3 of Pilchard's 4 legs. I don't bother drawing the 4th when I do a doodle. There's no need to. You know the 4th leg is back there. Your brains tell you so. 3 triangles give you the stripes on the body. 5 stripes on the tail. What's missing? Ears that listen, eyes that look, nose that sniffs, mouth that eats, whiskers that tickle. That's Pilchard. Ra-Ra the Noisy Lion, again, simple shapes. It's just 2 circles. It's a big circle. It's a small circle. The big circle is his mane. It's completely round, like an afro. But before we get there, we're going to draw his body, okay? There's his arms, there's his paws, there's his legs, there's his feet, and there's his tail, okay? There's his face, there's his nose, there's his mouth. He's always roaring. He's a noisy little lion. Eyes, eyebrows, there's those ears, and that's his mane. And that's how we draw Ra-Ra. It's all about playing with simple shapes. Now, one of the things you may not know about my dear little friend Bob the Builder is this, okay? I'm going to stick with a purple, see how we get on. And that is that when the moon is full, strange things happen. A transformation takes place, okay? His clothes tear, okay? And a thick, unsightly fur covers every inch of his short, fat, hairy body. Admittedly, so far, it could just be a drawing of me. However, his hands become clawed, as do the toes and those short, fat, hairy hobbit feet, okay? He gets a big, fat monobrow. Hair covers every inch of his head and his face and his cheeks and his jowls and his chin and his lip. The last thing to change, though, is his mouth, which transforms from a happy smile into a maw of razor-sharp teeth, a shining portcullis of deadly, perfect ivory. Because as we all know, Bob the Builder is, in fact, a member of the Bee Gees. That means nothing to you, but Sarah's laughing, and that suits me fine. He is, of course, a werewolf. That smooth, seamless segue brings me towards the thing that I really want to talk about, and that's my writing for older audiences. We're going to start by showing you a trailer for the WEREWORLD series now as well. Guys at the back, if we could do the video, that would be fantastic.
When the air is clear, 16-year-old Drew Ferren can pick up the scent of a predator. When the moon breaks through the clouds, a terrifying fever grips him. His flesh tears, his fingers become claws, and determined to destroy him and master the animal within.
Now, for many years, I've had a bit of a dream job working in film and TV, but it wasn't my dream job. I always wanted to write books for older audiences. My love of writing is unsurprisingly born out of my love of reading. My love of reading started at my local public library when I was about 2 or 3 years old, and I remember it well. Whilst my mum was off in the romance section digging out the latest Catherine Cookson, I was left rummaging around in the picture books, and I found one book that to this day has stayed with me as one of my favorites of all time. That was Where the Wild Things Are by Maurice Sendak. It was the first book I fell in love with, and I never looked back. By the time I was 8, 9 years old, I was back in the library choosing the first novel of my own volition, and that was The Hobbit by Tolkien. That's where I fell in love with fantasy as a genre. By the time I got into high school, when I was 11, 12 years old, my friends and I would get together once, twice, 3 times a week to play Dungeons & Dragons, a role-playing game. My friends couldn't be bothered learning the rules, therefore, it was left to Muggins here to learn the rules. Therefore, I ran the games. But that's why I learned to tell a tale and spin a yarn, by playing these games and hobbies with my friends. And there's that word again, hobby. I don't have any qualifications to write books, yet somehow, in the last 7 years, I've had 11 novels published. I understand books because of my love of reading. I understand storytelling because of the games and hobbies I had when I was your age. You may have your favorite books, your favorite authors, your favorite characters. You may be a Harry Potter fan. I believe a few of them out there. Other books are available, young man. You may be a Percy Jackson fan. That's another fine series. You may even, and I'll try not to hold it against you, you may even be a Twilight fan. 3 words, vampires shouldn't sparkle. I'm going to leave that there. In each of these cases, these are fantasy characters living in a real-world setting. WEREWORLD isn't. WEREWORLD is a fantasy world that owes more to the world of Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones. In fact, when this was launched at San Diego Comic-Con in 2011, it was described by Penguin, my publishers, as Game of Thrones for middle graders featuring werewolves. Kind of a good description, although there is only the one werewolf in there, that's Drew, our hero. Okay? It's a world where the royals, the nobles, the blue bloods who rule over the humans are known as the werelords, shapeshifters who change into different beasts. King of the realm is Leopold. He rules it with an iron fist, or an iron paw, as the case may be. He is a were-lion. There's Duke Bergen, lord of the woodland realm of Brackenholm, deep in a haunted forest known as the Direwood. He is a bear lord. Lady Gretchen, destined to marry the king's son, spoiled princess with a big shock of red hair. She's a were-fox. You can see where we're heading now. In the mountains, we have the stag lords of Stormdale, the spies of the king in every quarter of the land of the were-rats. There's a buccaneer pirate prince, Count Vega, captain of the Maelstrom, the fastest ship in the sea. I won't tell you what he is, but you may be able to guess. But the story follows Drew Ferren, a young boy, becoming a young man, okay? His body's going through all sorts of strange changes, growing pains like you can't imagine. It turns out he's actually the last of the Grey Wolves of Westland. He's the rightful king of the realm. And it's Drew's story as he's chased across the 7 realms, encountering all manner of werelord along the way. This is epic fantasy horror. It's fantasy with a big F. It's horror with a smaller H. But as the series progresses, the horror stakes get ramped up along the way. First book in the series is Rise of the Wolf. When it was published in 2011, it was shortlisted for the Waterstones Book Prize. A huge deal for me. It was my debut novel. Since then, I have become a full-time writer. These are the American covers you can see on the screen, which I'm very fond of as well. The nice thing about them is the shield device that you see around the artwork on each one. The guy who does this, Necro, he does all these sorts of weird sort of Geiger influenced alien kind of artwork. Very photorealistic stuff, but dark and gothic. Kind of metalhead kind of stuff we're talking about. But for this, he's done this thing, this lovely detail where you see these different creatures in the shield device around each character. And as we go through the series, the world opens up to Drew. At the beginning of the series, you've got bears, boars, stags, and wolves, kind of Northern European, North American creatures. But as the series progresses, the world opens up. The places Drew visits become more exotic. Guys, come in at the back if you wish. Just come straight in at the back if you need to, okay? By the time you get to the 3rd book, Shadow of the Hawk, we have a crocodile, a walrus, a rhino, and a jackal. By the time you get to the 5th book, Storm of Sharks, you can imagine the creatures that appear on the covers. And then we've obviously got the British jackets there as well, okay? Andrew Farley is the illustrator we used for these. And that's changed shape as the series has progressed as well. How are you guys at quizzes? Are you only good at literary quizzes or book quizzes? Don't worry, this bears no resemblance to a literary quiz whatsoever, okay? Hairy man or wolf man? I'm going to show you some extreme close-ups of furry faces from film, TV, and pop music. I want you to tell me, are we looking at the face of a hairy man or a wolf man? Could it be any easier? Here we go. Okay, hairy man or wolfman? Hairy man, yeah, started it easy, Seasick Steve. Okay, next up, hairy man or wolfman? Hairy man, I don't know what your dad looks like. If it's anything like that, you're in a lot of trouble. That's the American werewolf in London. Okay, hairy man or wolfman? Oh, getting a bit excited there. It's Taylor Lautner! Admittedly, he's a little bit of both. He can't quite decide what he is in many ways, shapes, and forms. Okay, next up, hairy man or wolfman? Coming up now, if we can just stay in range. There we go. Hairy man or wolfman? Hairy man? Seriously, what does your dad look like? That's Werewolf Oz from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Next up, hairy man or wolfman? Hairy man? Yeah, yeah. The eyebrows, yeah, it's just Gorgeous George in need of a shave. Next up, hairy man or wolfman? Ah, there we go. What are we saying, though? Hairy man or wolfman for Wolverine? Hands up for hairy man. Hands up for wolfman. Those of you who think Wolverine's a wolfman, can I just point out, a Wolverine is a kind of irritable, bad-tempered North American badger. It's got no wolf in it whatsoever. Neither does dear old Wolverine. He is irritable, he is bad-tempered, but he's just a hairy man with fantastic, award-winning mutton chops, okay? He is a mutant. He is not a wolfman, okay? What are we looking at now? Hairy man or wolfman? Hairy man, yeah, that was easy. We're looking at Spock there, okay? He needs his eyebrows trimming. Next up, hairy man or wolfman? Wolfman? No, it's just Jack, although he is very scary. Okay? Next up, we're looking at hairy man or wolfman? Hairy man? No, that's a wolfman. We're looking at being human, okay? Next up, hairy man or wolfman? Hairy man, you're right, it's just Gandalf. Hairy man or wolfman? Hairy man, you're right, it's Gandalf's friend. What are we looking at next one? Hairy man or wolfman? Wolfman, that's the bearded ladies. You take great offense at that. Hairy man or wolfman? Wolfman, very good. Yeah, we're looking at TEENWOLF. If he comes up on the screen, we're struggling with the receiver there. Oh, it's paused. There we go, yeah. TEENWOLF. Okay, hairy man or wolfman? Hairy man? No, it's a wolfman, the howling. Hairy man or wolfman? Hairy man, you're right. Just Jack, still scary. Hairy man or wolfman? Wolfman? That's Beardy Potter. Hairy man or wolfman? Okay, Wolfman, yeah, you're right. We're looking at the Wolfman. Whenever he appears on the screen, it's going to do it any second now. This is the danger of technology. Every time, okay? The Wolfman! Next up, what are we looking at there? Hairy man, you're right. The Brad Pitt! Okay, next one. Who are we looking at? Hairy man or Wolfman? Finally, Jack Nicholson is a Wolfman. Now, have a look online, WEREWORLDseries.com. This is the official book's website, okay? Everything on there is provided by myself as the author, my editors in Penguin. You can download extracts from each book in the series. You can try it before you buy it. See if it's a fit. It should be. You are the target audience for this series. It's the same reading audience as Potter and Percy Jackson. However, we do have as many adults reading the series as we do kids as well. Fantasy as a genre should appeal to any audience. WEREWORLD is no different. It's also, fantasy is not just for lads and dads, it's for mums and daughters also. Certainly if it's done correctly, yeah? The female characters in my books kick butt just as well, if not better than the male characters. That's important for me. I have 3 little girls at home. I want them to be strong. Yes, there are scenes of horror. There are gory battles. There are transformation scenes where heads, limbs, and jawbones get ripped or bitten off, left, right, and centre. But there are also quieter, more thoughtful, tender moments where Drew, our hero, finds himself in something of a love triangle. Don't worry, boys. I don't do romance. However, have you ever had that feeling where you look across the yard and think, oh, she's lovely, I'm going to go and say something clever? And you go for a bimbo. Da-da-da-da-da, ba-ba-ba-ba. But the closer you get, the more nervous you become. Like your tummy's full of, I don't know, butterflies, or maybe you've had a bad sausage roll. That's what I'm talking about. It's not a lovey-dovey, kissy-wissy romance. It's more the feeling that your breakfast is about to make a sudden and savage reappearance. Okay? You've also got character descriptions on the website. Okay? It's very interactive. There's a map there as well. The map, that's a gorgeous thing about illustrating your own books. I still get to do illustrations in these books, and I get to do a map at the front as well. It's a fantasy world. You don't know north from south and east from west. Scroll over the map, it's even more interactive because the yellow symbols are full moons. It will tell you who the werelords are that rule the different realms. It will give you a clue where the series is heading before Drew and the books have even got there. There is also a quiz on the website as well. You can answer a series of questions to find out what kind of werelord you would be, which pack you would belong to. Okay, and there's also the official Facebook page. None of you lot should be on Facebook. I can't stress that enough. You're not old enough. However, I'm under no illusions. Half of you probably are. I will say this about the Facebook page. It is a safer page you'll find on Facebook because it's administrated by Penguin and Puffin in New York and London. You can download extracts from each book in the series on there, but I'll answer questions on there as well. If you're sensible, and you pop along with a grown-up, I'm very happy to answer those questions. Like most authors and illustrators, you will find me on social media all day long getting no work done, procrastinating. Okay, you will find me if you go looking. That's a cover for Storm of Sharks. That's the 5th book in the series. He's one of the good guys, by the way. Never judge a book by its cover, okay? Haunt, Dead Scared, and its sequel, Dead Wrong. Haunt is set a world away from WEREWORLD, okay? Haunt is set in our world, my world to be precise. It's actually set in my old high school in the north of England where I'm from. So is the sequel. It's a black comedy, a comedy ghost story. There's an awful lot of young adult literature out these days, which is dark, dystopian, miserable, for want of a better word. I didn't want to do that. There's enough of it out there. I wanted to write something that was funny. It's dark because it's scary. It's a ghost story. But the likeness comes to the comedy, okay? It's about 2 best friends, Will and Dougie. They go everywhere together. They're joined at the hip like yin and yang. But their friendship is tested to its limit in the opening chapter of the book when Will is killed in a hit-and-run accident. But he comes back and haunts Dougie, okay? And everywhere Dougie goes, Will follows. It's like there's an invisible umbilical cord attaching them to one another. 6 feet away, everywhere he goes, Will follows. Dougie wakes up in the middle of the night. There's Will staring at him over his bed, hovering. This isn't at all creepy, is it? Okay? Goes downstairs to eat his breakfast, okay? Will's counting every single mouthful of Cheerios. He goes upstairs, he sits on the toilet, Will's watching. I'll do that later. Gets in the shower. It gets awkward really quickly, trust me, okay? In order to help Will move on, Dougie says, let's go to the old haunted schoolhouse. They go and meet the ghost that lives there or haunts it. She scares them witless, but they come back and they befriend her. She's the ghost of a little girl from the 1960s called Phyllis. She's been haunting this old schoolhouse that's due to be demolished for 50, 60 years. So long, in fact, she can't even remember how she died, the circumstances of her own demise. And Will and Dougie think maybe if we can help Phyllis move on, in turn, we'll be able to help Will move on. So they dig a little bit deeper. They find out why she's here. The reason is because her killer is very much alive, very much well, and very much an active member of their community. And that's where my comedy ghost story actually becomes a murder mystery. Okay? In the 2nd book, we find out that there's more to Will's death than we first thought as well. I'm going to show you a book trailer here that was produced by kids at my old high school. It was kids not much older than you made this trailer. It was so good that Simon & Schuster, my publishers, made it the official book trailer for the novels. Okay? Now, this just goes to show you what you can do with a camera in your hands. If you are creative, you can turn that into something. Use that creativity. Okay? This trailer gives you an introduction to the books. Now, we could have shown you a minute of funny scenes, but first and foremost, it's a ghost story, and that's what the kids at my old school concentrated on. This is the trailer for Haunt.
It had just gone 9, the church bells tolling nearby. I had to get to Dougie's house. My good news couldn't wait. Not that my best mate would believe me. Of course he'd call me a liar, accuse me of having Munchausen syndrome, maybe a head trauma. I'd never forget that chill November evening. Something had turned my world upside down. It had blown my tiny mind. We're talking Death Star explosion here. It looked like an exciting new chapter in my life was about to begin. Then again, fate can be a fickle beast. I never saw the vehicle that hit me. It came out of nowhere. I heard the headlights shatter. I felt my bicycle crumple against the bumper as I flew out of the saddle, hitting the bonnet with a bang. My body spun as the car sped on, impacting with the windscreen before rolling like a rag doll over the roof. Then the vehicle was gone. I was dead before I hit the tarmac.
It is a comedy, honestly. But the job of the trailer is to grab your attention. Judging by how many buttons leapt in the air, it seemed to do its trick. Okay, the WEREWORLD books and the Haunt books, they're all available out there in McGrudy's little shop. If you want to have a look afterwards, I'll be out there signing books. I'm going to wrap up this session, though, by introducing you to Max Helsing. Fear. Fear is an emotion that parents want to protect you from. Well, that's impossible, okay? Fear is an emotion that we need to be able to talk about. We're born into this world screaming. I wake up every morning screaming. So would you if you had kids like mine at home, okay? We need to talk about our emotions and deal with them, and that's why books are really important, because we can use them as a springboard to talk about the things that we're encountering. The worst way for you to experience fear is being chased down the street by a gang of bullies. No, not cool. The best way for you to experience fear is in a scary story, in my opinion, okay? Because if it's in a book, you're in no danger. If you get to a scary bit, you just shut the book. It's not going to hurt you. If it's really scary, throw it in the chest freezer in the garage. You're in no danger when you read a scary story. It's a vicarious thrill. So I am a huge advocate for writing and reading scary stories with children. All the books I write are influenced by the films and TV shows I watched and loved as a kid. Okay, in the case of Max Helsing, okay, we've got things like Jason and the Argonauts, okay, the favorite film of mine when I was a child, made by Ray Harryhausen, wonderful filmmaker. Okay, this led directly to my love of vampires as well as any kind of undead. That's Nosferatu, F.W. Murnau's stolen story from Bram Stoker's Dracula. It's a classic of cinema. That's the first vampire I saw as a kid. He scared me, big time. He'd scare you as well. Okay, baldy head, bulging eyes, pointed teeth, great long claws for fingers. He doesn't sparkle, does he? Okay? And then there was, of course, Christopher Lee. Christopher Lee, you will know Christopher Lee as Saruman, the White Wizard in The Lord of the Rings. But for me, he was always running across my TV screen in the 1970s, covered in tomato ketchup. Okay? And obviously shows like The Walking Dead. It's a great show, but it comes from a comic book. Comic books can be a way into reading for the most reluctant reader. You might not think you like reading, you've just not found the right book yet. Go to your school teacher, your librarian, your local bookshop. Have a look at some of the comic books that are out there. You've not found the right book yet. It could be that that book is a comic book. The illustrations help you draw you into that world. And let's not forget the Wolfman, okay? Remade recently with huge budget and special effect by Hollywood, but it's no way near as good as the old black and white 1940s version with Lon Chaney. I know he looks a bit rubbish now. He looks like he's been covered in glue rolling around the floor of a barber shop. But he is infinitely more interesting than the version that we see in the new film because we care about him, okay? And this leads us towards Max Helsing, the 13th Curse, okay? This is the American cover is different to the British cover, of course. It often is the case. They change the title as well, okay? But we've got these different characters. We've got Max, who's basically the 12-year-old last in line of the Van Helsings, a vampire hunter. He hunts monsters for a living. He has friends who help him as well. On the right, we have Sid Perez. Sid is a machine head, a gearhead, an inventor. She makes all the gadgets and gizmos that Max uses on his missions, okay? He doesn't use guns. He likes to improvise. Yo-yos are his favorite weapons. And on the left, we have Wing Lu. Wing is a homeschooled Chinese-American wonder kid obsessed with monsters, okay? And these are some of the things I still get to do with these books is I do illustrations of the characters as well. Every time Max encounters a new monster in the Max Helsing books, we get a page from Monstrosi Bestiarum, an illustration provided by myself, and then a description of what those creatures are. So we have the gargoyle, okay? What do you think that is? What kind of creature is it? Anyone? A mermaid, yeah. Ariel's let herself go, hasn't she? Also known as a selkie or a siren. The vampire, okay? That's my early version of the vampire in these books also. So I still get to do these illustrations. The mummy, yeah, okay? The forest guardian. There's a whole bunch of them. There are about 12 illustrations in each of these novels. They're there as another level to draw you in, okay? Another layer of immersion in the story, okay? And lastly, very quickly, just show you, we've got the ghoul and the satyr, okay? Mr. Tumnus, he's been working out in the gym, hasn't he, okay? So these are some of the characters I get to do with these books. And that's just some of the novels that I've been known for. I'm going to close this session with a reading from one of the books. I'm going to read from Rise of the Wolf, okay? This is the first book in the WEREWORLD series. I'm going to read a passage from 3 chapters in to close this session, okay? Drew is a shepherd boy. He lives far away from the world of the werelords. He knows nothing about them. However, at night time, when the moon is rising, his body is going through these changes, okay? He doesn't know why. It's because he's slowly turning into the wolf. It's never happened before, but it's going to happen this night. Feeling ill as he does, he stays behind on the farm whilst his father goes to the nearby market to sell their wares. Drew doesn't go with Mac Ferren, his dad. He stays at home with his mum, Tilly, being nursed. He's quite happy with that. He loves his mum dearly. Day becomes night. His father has not yet returned from the market. A storm has hit the cold coast where they live. As the lightning crashes, the thunder crashes, and the rain fills the gutters, Drew and his mother look out of the window into the storm. They see a shape bounding through the darkness towards the house. They back away from the window as the frame buckles, the glass shatters. The wind and the rain blows through the house. The fire in the hearth sputters out. They see a shape rise from the wreckage of the window frame. It has a thick, shaggy pelt, a long, snaking tail, broad jaws, jagged teeth, great long claws. It goes to attack Drew and his mother. Drew grabs his father's sword from the fireplace. He goes to defend his mother from the beast, only for it to smash him to the ground in one fell swoop. Tilly thinks her boy has been killed. She steps over his body protectively, as any mother would, only for the beast to backhand her through the house. She lands with a crunch on the kitchen table as Drew slowly comes to. Twitching and shuddering, Drew could only watch on as the monster sent his mother crashing into the kitchen. As it followed, all Drew wanted was the strength to rise and attack the beast, to bring it down. But he was paralyzed by an unfathomable weakness that had now consumed him. The creature slowly advanced into the kitchen, drawing out the inevitable. It stepped through the chaos, wind cloaking it with rainwater as it shambled up to the table. Tilly Ferren whispered the word no over and over, again and again, but she knew this was her end. There was nothing she could do to stop the monster. I thought I was safe from you, she mouthed, though the words found no volume. I thought you'd never find us. The animal snarled a grin and mouthed a single word. Never. Then it closed its jaws around her throat. Indescribable fear raged through Drew's body as he watched the nightmare scene unfold. He closed his eyes, willing his limbs to move, but was instead assailed by a feverish spasm. It started in his guts, as before, but worse, much worse. He felt his insides tearing, fighting, not to pull free from his body, but twisting about and finding fresh homes. His bowels seemed to rise from the pit of his belly and shift further back, while his lungs grew threefold, great gasps of air racing into his chest. As his lungs grew, so did his rib cage, straining at first before cracking and popping, chest expanding as his ribs took a new shape, the pain unbearable. He gritted his teeth as he felt a pressure grip his skull like a vice. The strain increased. He thought his eyes might burst from their sockets. He felt his gums tear as his teeth worked themselves free. His arms came up before him, but he could only stare in horror as his hands distorted, stretched and elongated, nails tearing from fingers into great long claws. Hair shot from his flesh, up his arms and from his chest, as he felt his mind threatening to slip away. His skull cracked under the pressure as his jaw dislocated, a muzzle breaking out. His eyes hazed over, yellow and baleful, as he looked up from where he crouched. He let out a low growl, almost inaudible over the sound of the storm, but the monster heard him. Before the beast could move, Drew leapt forward in a single bound. Though clearly stronger and a seasoned killer, the beast let slip its guard in a panic, and Drew's jaws snapped over its skull. He yanked the beast's head back in a sharp, savage motion, and with a ragged tear, the flesh came with it. Letting loose a screech of pain, the monster struck back, clawed fist hitting Drew hard in the chest. The force of the blow sent the boy tumbling back, crashing into a dresser in an avalanche of crockery. Looking up from where he lay in a heap, Drew saw the creature rise. Ragged breaths escaped its mouth as moonlight streamed in through the kitchen window, illuminating the damage Drew had dealt it. The right-hand side of its face was missing, revealing torn sinew and cartilage slicked with black blood. Bare skull caught the light, a crescent of bone that arched around the eye socket like a bright white sickle. It's not Bob the Builder, is it? Drew's world is turned upside down from the 3rd chapter. That gives you an idea of where he's heading. Have you enjoyed this session, boys and girls? Who's going to read these books now? Who's going to read any books? You're in the right place for it, okay? I'm going to be out there signing books shortly. I'm now going to hand you back to the lovely people who are running the festival and the book fair. Have a fantastic day, guys. I'm going to be out there doodling in the books now, okay?